Well, our penultimate speaker is Mads Friis Jensen, quickly becoming a good ally and good friend of mine, I'm glad to say. He's the commercial group manager for SerEnergy. He's got quite a background in commercializing high-temperature PEM fuel cell vehicles. He also has a history in the Danish Army and the Queen's Artillery Regiment, I noticed. And it struck me that to really introduce Mads adequately, I need to pay real tribute to his perseverance and willingness to get into battle for market share, because it's not easy. So naturally, I thought I should turn to Rocky Balboa for inspiration. And he made the following observation in Rocky III when he was asked, how's your fight going to go with Apollo Creed? And he says, my prediction of the future is that there will be pain. So I know you can endure a lot of pain, but you've got all the great stuff, so welcome to our panel.
Yes, thanks. Well, thank you for that very nice introduction. And yes, there has been pain, and there will continue to be pain, especially now that I'm hearing all the improvements being done on the combustion engine.
There you go.
Yeah. So I will not talk about combustion engines, but fuel cells instead. Very briefly, a little bit about SerEnergy. We're a small company in Denmark. We're fully owned by the Fischer group in south of Germany, who is already a relatively large company supplying components for the automotive industry. And we are tackling, you could say, the new leg, which is fuel cells and components for fuel cells. Our basic concept is to convert methanol water through the methanol fuel cell system into electrical energy that is charged onto a battery. So these hybridization systems is what we focus on solely. What we can do is we can create a very high electrical efficiency, and when we calculate electrical efficiency, it's all included. And this is what is being measured out there. What we can provide is a high fuel savings compared to diesel engines being done in what we here would say very small sizes, stationary diesel engines. So this is down to 20 kVA, so very small electrical gensets being used in stationary applications. One of the main advantages that you remove all harmful emissions, and that also includes noise and vibrations, and you have a very reliable system that doesn't need any maintenance. And these things are what we see as our entrance compared to other technologies out there. Our core product, which we have spent almost 10 years getting to, is a 5 kilowatt methanol engine. You can see the rough comparison in size with the hand. It's roughly 70 kilograms, and everything's included. What you'll also see is there's a relatively high startup time because we operate at higher temperatures. So this means we spend some time in getting to that temperature where we can actually operate the system. That refers back to being always in a hybridized system where you have a battery pack that can take instant loads, and they can take load variations, and the fuel cell takes the average power production in converting methanol into electricity. So this is my efficiency comparison, and what you can see is basically the green line was what you saw people testing in the automotive industry some 20 years ago as being the methanol fuel cell concept based on low temperature PEM and methanol reforming with gas cleanup. Below you see a comparison line in terms of what we see as a diesel engine electrical efficiency in real-world applications. Now that's extremely far from what we see here today on the marine engines, but that is what we see today on the stationary diesel gensets. What we have done is we have changed the way you reform methanol into electricity through fuel cells, which enables us to have a significantly better electrical efficiency than what was seen some 20 years ago and what is seen with low temperature PEM. This is the core engine, which consists of the fuel cell on one side, and on the other side, the methanol reformer. Now, what has changed is we operate at 160 degrees and making it a high temperature PEM fuel cell. There are two things that are important to take from this. One thing is we don't need to clean the reformed methanol gas before it goes into the fuel cell, which you need to do on low temperature PEM. So this means that gas cleaning is not included in the system and is not needed in the system. So that takes away an element that has a complexity and has a cost. Secondarily, we use the waste heat from the fuel cell to evaporate methanol water, which saves energy in the total system. Those two elements are what fundamentally changes the methanol reforming concepts that you saw 20 years ago into something that's feasible today. As said before, and you've seen different variants of this model, this is the one we use. What's a little significant in this one is the way we think about the hybridization of vehicles. So our concept is to work with the battery electric vehicles by reducing the battery pack and ensuring that you can both charge the battery when that's, you could say, something that's feasible, and you can also use the onboard methanol reforming to provide energy when that's needed. And basically how that looks is you reduce the battery size to 30 to 50 kilometers, making the battery pack inside the electric vehicle more affordable, and also you ensure that you have a full utilization on every trip of the battery pack. There have been many studies on this, but the bulk of the trips being done by cars today is done in this 30 to 50 kilometers range. The only point is every once in a while you will need a longer range, and you would like to remove this range anxiety, which is apparently a disease going around out there. Secondary to that, we can also integrate the heating system with the fuel cell. So all the waste heat from the fuel cell goes directly into the car. So every electron is used for propulsion, and the waste heat is used to actually heat the cabin. Secondary to this, and this is why this is a cooling system, we operate at these 160 degrees, which opens up the possibility of using the waste heat also as absorption cooling on board the vehicle. So this means when you're not in Iceland or Denmark or Norway and it's very cold, when you go a little bit south, you suddenly want air conditioning. And this is also something that we can provide without using electrons for air conditioning. So this totally gives a very high efficiency on the total car system. So how does this look? I'm going to start with an example from REM 2030, which is regional e-mobility from Germany, where Fraunhofer spent a good deal of time in figuring out how to make the best vehicle platform for the future. What they did was they took a battery electric vehicle with roughly these 50 kilometers of range on the battery, and then they added a methanol fuel cell from our side. As you can see, they put in a fuel tank, a liquid fuel tank, and the fuel cell itself, they put it in the back in the boot, and they integrated it very nicely. They had, as it was regional e-mobility, they had set forward a criteria on how people was actually driving cars in this region of Germany. And they put up 67 kilometers, 40 kilometers average speed, and 120 as the maximum speed. So this was, you could say, a driving cycle a little bit different from what you see in the new European driving cycle. This was the challenge. When they did it as a battery electric vehicle, they wouldn't get all the way through the driving cycle. They would get pretty much, you could say, at 50 kilometers was what's the battery pack capacity. So by implementing the range extender with only 5 kilowatt of net electrical energy, they were able to keep an average charge on the battery pack, and thereby actually making the demand of the regional e-mobility demands in this part of Germany. And this was basically only limited by the volume of the tank, which was in this case relatively small, but that's a beautiful thing about methanol. You can scale your energy content on board as you wish. When it comes to emission, we have seen a lot on NOx and different other emissions. What we can provide with the methanol fuel cell is roughly these 40 to 60 grams, depending a little bit on the vehicle and the vehicle efficiency, electrical to wheel. And we basically remove all harmful emissions. So that's NOx, SOx, all other trace elements, methanol, formaldehyde, all these things we've been hearing about today. Through external parties, we have measured the quality of the outgoing air, and it is of a sufficient quality so you can actually breathe it. So that's the level of exhaust we get to. In addition to this, also, as said before, vibrations and sound is at an absolute minimum with this technology. What is really interesting is actually to see the well-to-wheel CO2 emission, because this is what you have to look at to actually get a full picture of what it means when you implement this in a vehicle. Now, the only ones who have done you could see an unbiased and an open comparative study is the Danish Department of Energy, because we of course feed them information on what we are actually doing, and they include this in their comparative studies. The current status is based on what you know from today, so this means black fuels with a little green put into the mix. On electricity, which goes in the bottom section, it's the grid mix coming from both coal, natural gas, and also a lot of wind turbines in Denmark. The green scenario is based on biofuels and electricity coming from wind turbines. And what you can see is in both the current status and the green scenario, methanol is the least CO2 emitting technology out there. And this is looking at the full system, including production, distribution, and tank to wheel. As said before, it's no good to be green unless you also have some kind of economic focus. Right now, I'm focusing just on the fuel economics, because on the vehicle economics, there's no question about it. Our technology is more expensive than when you buy an off-the-shelf vehicle with a combustion engine. We definitely plan and can see when we do our analysis, we can get to a similar cost as a combustion engine is today. Maintenance will be much lower, and this is the fuel concept. So basically, this is what you can see. It's in Danish crowns, because it's a Danish example. As you can see in the top, it's the raw price of fuel. It's all the taxes that we put on fuel in Denmark. And then in the end, it will be the pump price. Put to that is a fuel efficiency kilometer per liter, and then the accumulated cost per kilometer driven. And what you can see is that today, when we taxate methanol water, we taxate it as diesel in Denmark. Now, this is, I would say, not really fair, and this is not what you could say we hope to be the end game. We have a dialogue with the tax authorities because, as you can see there, we put more energy tax on than the actual fuel costs. And we actually pay tax on the water that we already paid water tax on. So I tried to explain to them that somewhere this has to end. So what has already been established as a practice in Denmark is to taxate on an energy basis and not on a volume basis. And this is what we are basically focusing on getting. And if you get to that point where you taxate, you could say in a fair and balanced way, you get to a point where you have roughly 1/3 fuel savings compared to diesel. This methanol price and the fuel prices is based on today's pricing. And what you can say is that shows a gap to have a little bit increased price in terms of green methanol, because this is based on gray or black methanol, whatever you want to call it, the going rate for methanol cost today. So this is really what we are focusing on, saying that you get a vehicle at the same price, you don't have to go to the repair shop that often, and you save some when you actually drive it. And this is focused on the driving 100% on methanol. You can still electrically charge the vehicle whenever that suits you. So you need to take a first step, and the first step was building a vehicle that incorporated this technology, and also making sure that we have the infrastructure for it. So we started this summer by building the first methanol station in Europe, and also a few vehicles that could drive around on this methanol water mix that came out of it. It was a big process. A lot of people were involved, including the fuel distributor, the fuel pump manufacturer, Methanex as a fuel supplier, and also somebody to coordinate everything, and then of course carbon recycling to provide the actual fuel we use. This is the vehicle. Unlike the German variant you saw just before, which was slow and pretty, then this is quick and dirty. So it's a converted electrical vehicle, a combustion variant that was turned into an electrical vehicle, which we then in turn turned into a battery electric vehicle with a methanol range extender. As you can see in the boot, we take up basically where the people sitting in the back should have been sitting. And we put in a fuel tank and a stationary fuel cell, and we basically made our initial testing based on this. Now we have a few thousand kilometers on it. We still drive it internally, but within the next period of time, the local pizza guy in Aalborg will be driving around this car and delivering pizzas. So that's the concept for the initial testing of this. On the infrastructure side, we focused on ensuring that we could basically get out of the discussion on toxicity of methanol and the hazards of humans getting into contact with methanol. We did that by employing a spill-free connection used in other industry areas, and combining that with the standard methanol, the standard fueling concept that's being deployed all over Denmark, or on this distributor's network all over Denmark. So this means we change pretty much maybe 10% of the components in the refueling station, otherwise everything's the same. For this station, we digged in the ground a new underground tank for methanol, which is delivered pre-mixed, but it's prepared so you can actually deliver raw methanol and then get your water from on-site. This fueling station can also provide 100% pure methanol if anyone were to put M100 cars in Denmark, for example. Last thing is, it's not necessary to always dig in new tanks in the ground. The existing tanks on these stations could be turned into methanol tanks if you had an available tank. And then we come back to this, which is the OK network in Denmark. So they have a lot of stations. They actually have more stations than is on this map. It's just Google Maps playing a trick on me. But what you can see is the point is that if you want an infrastructure, you can do it very fast and very easy. It will cost the same as upgrading the refueling infrastructure with a new fuel or just doing normal maintenance on it. One little extra trick I might add here is this refueling station is MID approved, so this means that you can actually open it to the public. So this means that when you deliver 1 liter, you're absolutely sure that it's 1 liter. So right now it's closed for our testing, but you can open it so normal people can be charged of fueling here, which is a trick that sometimes is problematic with new fuels, is that you need to go through these regulatory approvals. We have gone through that. Secondarily, I'll just follow up with a few things, something we do sometimes to expand the applications that we're working with. This is a sweeping machine that we made, where we integrated the electrical drivetrain with a methanol range extender. Once again, it's 5 kilowatts. And we basically implemented it and started driving around and sweeping as much as we could, basically trying to somehow disturb it and break it. We didn't manage to do that. We actually managed to drive full-day operations with no emissions and no more sound than what was coming from the actual fan inside the sweeping machine. So this is one example of a successful demo for something else than automotive. Secondary to this is forklifts, which on hydrogen fuel cells has been hugely successful up until now. We can do the same and have done that for some years, testing it. This is an internal test on the facility in Germany. And then finally, to talk a little bit about the future and what will be the next step, would be OEM-based electric vehicle. In this case, the ENV 200, which shares, you could say, technical platform with the Nissan Leaf, which is a little bit more widely known. The concept is the same. You provide 5 to 10 kilowatt methanol fuel cell and a fuel cell tank, and by that you actually add the range up to 500 kilometers in operation. The focus of this is not going on highways to southern Europe or anything, but it is for fleet operations, so delivery vans, it is for taxi driving in urban areas, and all of these applications where you actually need the extra onboard energy capacity. And this is something we are working on now, and hopefully will launch in this year, so we can start to see some more methanol fuel cell vehicles on the street. And that's the end.
Only the beginning.